Hi, everyone. We are lucky enough today to have as our guest Laura Leist. Laura is the founder of Eliminate Chaos, which she founded over 20 years ago. She employs a team of organizing specialists that help their clients get organized and also right-sized, especially if they're planning to move, but also just if they're living in their home. So they handle everything from move management, packing, unpacking, organizing, and I've had clients use her in the past and they've absolutely raved about her. Laura has authored over 15 books. The one that I was originally introduced to was Eliminate Chaos, the 10-step process to organize your home and life. And that's where I became a big fan of Laura's and started to follow her. Laura, and I'm going to read this so I get it right, is the past NAPO president of the National Association of Productivity and Organizing Professionals. So Laura and Rob share a home with Chaos, but Chaos is a Bernese mountain dog, and she jokes it's the only chaos that she won't eliminate. Laura's famous saying, I guess, is that it's not that the treasured moments in life is what really matters, not the stuff. And what Laura does is really help you get organized so you can focus on what's most important. So Laura, thank you very much for joining us. And can you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you started Eliminate Chaos?
Sure. Thanks, Jean. So I started Eliminate Chaos 20 years ago to really help our clients get organized in their homes and offices. And my background is in management information systems. So I'm a former project manager in the IT world. And a lot of my former managers had always commented about how I was really organized and always on top of the details. And it's just something that comes naturally to me. It's something that I really enjoy. And over the years, I've had a number of people come to our home and say, wow, could you come and do that in our home for us? And so, gosh, back in 2000 when I started the business, most people had never heard of our industry, and I was always having to explain, what it was that we did. And now it's much more mainstream. Real Simple magazine wasn't available back then, and so times have really changed. You can barely pick up a magazine or a newspaper and not see an article about organizing and the benefits that it provides. So that's a little bit about how I got started.
Well, great. Thank you for sharing that. And one of the things that I've encountered, and one of the reasons that I started to follow you to try to pick up a lot of tidbits is I work with a lot of clients that need or want to downsize.
Mm-hmm.
And when I walk through the home with them, there's one and sometimes even two empty bedrooms, or what should be empty bedrooms. They're empty of people, but they are stacked full of stuff, either stuff from their late mom or their kids that they can't part with, or from their last move sometimes. Mm-hmm. How do you help people not feel overwhelmed and start that process?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think it's very natural for someone to feel overwhelmed. And that's so much of why we are called in to do this work, because we have a process for this, and we have basically, our 10 steps is documented in a book that I wrote that you mentioned. And so it's really about kind of following that process. And so if we took, for example, the room, a room that's been turned into a storage room in a home, it could be filled with a variety of things, right? I mean, it could have clothing that someday you're going to fit into, or it might have toys from when your children were young. You could have a lot of memorabilia. You could have photos. You could have gifts. I mean, there could just be so many different categories of things that are being stored in that room. And so what I would recommend is that people start with what I call a macro sort, which means you start at one area of the room and you go around the room and you sort into categories, high level categories of things that you know that you have in there. If possible, you can remove those items from the room so that you have, a little bit more space to move around in. I know that that's not always possible, but it's very difficult to just jump into this organizing process and downsizing and letting go of things or editing things out if you can't see everything, together. So let's say that you go into the room, and maybe what you do is you first pull out all of the the toys or the children's memorabilia, and you gather all of that together in one area, and then maybe the pictures go into another area and clothing into another. And then on a separate day, you decide, well, now what am I going to tackle? What am I really going to work on? And then that's where what I call a micro sort comes into play, where now you're going to focus on just this one category of things that you're going to work through. And doing this it can be very challenging, because whenever we are organizing something, it means that we are making decisions. That's actually step 4 in my book, is to make decisions, which is part of sorting. And I think that that's one of the hardest things for people to do, is to make decisions about what is going to stay and what's going to leave the home, or what you're going to pass on to someone else. And so you may not want to do all of that work at one given time. So I find that setting a timer on your phone so that you've got a specific focused amount of time to make those decisions, walk away, come back to it later that day, come back to it at another day altogether. But eventually you will work through that. And then you repeat that with the next category of items. Now, one thing that I would also mention to you is a technique that we use with some of our clients when we walk into a room that has a lot of stuff and a lot of different categories of things. It's a technique that's called white sheeting. And it's basically where you get a sheet, like a white sheet, and you drape it over all of the things that you don't want to be focusing on at that time. It doesn't have to be a white sheet. That's just the technique. You can get a blanket, use whatever you want. The idea is that you don't want your mind to be distracted from those things that you were currently working on, so that you can stay focused on what it is that you're trying to make those current decisions on. So that would be kind of my idea on just how to get started in that process.
So when it comes to making decisions on what to keep and let go of, that's where I find that people tend to hit the wall. They have sentimental attachment to things that they don't, need. And maybe don't even want, but they just don't like the thought of it winding up, in being donated in a bin or something where someone won't really appreciate the story behind it. How do you help people sort through and be able to make these, what sometimes need to be rather rapid fire decisions, because that's, to me, the hard part of the whole process, at least me personally?
I think it's hard for everyone. I'll share a little story with you. A couple of years ago, Rob and I sold our home, and I had some clothing that was in a box, and it was clothing that my mom, who passed away when I was 16, she made just the cutest little outfits for me as a child. And I kept those pieces of clothing because I thought that someday I I would have a child, and I would, hopefully if it was a girl, I would, let her wear the clothing. Well, that never happened. I never had children. And then as I was pulling these out of the attic, thinking to myself, wow, like I just sat on the floor and I cried because I never had anyone that could use these things that meant so much to me. And I got to thinking about all my brothers with their daughters, and maybe I should have, passed it along a little earlier. But I did have one brother, my youngest brother, had a little girl at the time, and so I thought, well, maybe what I could do is take pictures of the clothing and then go find pictures of me in the clothing and send them to my brother and sister-in-law and see if they would be willing to take the clothing. And I told them straight up, I said, hey, if you don't want this, my feelings aren't hurt, but I wanted to ask before I do anything else with it because it would mean a lot to me, if you would like it. And so they said yes, and so I shipped away the box. But here's a couple of things to think about from my own personal story is that, number one, I asked permission of a family member to see if they would be okay accepting these things that I no longer wanted or had a need for. I didn't just give them to that person. I didn't want to pass along what could be like my own, quote, clutter to a family member. So I think that's really important to keep in mind is to ask. And if a family member, a friend says, no, I don't want that, then don't accept the guilt that you are not able to pass it on to someone. The other thing to think about when, letting go of things is that if you can find a good home for these items, I think you will feel so much better about letting them go. And so I know I felt better that I had found a good home for them. And so for some people, it may not mean giving them to friends and family. It may mean finding a resource, somebody that really needs these items, and that that person can really benefit. And I'll tell you what, when I make this suggestion to our clients and I say, you know what, if you don't feel good about just dropping your clothing off at, your local, whatever donation place it might be, why don't you take that clothing instead to a women's shelter or a transition home where these women really need clothing? And the look on their faces when I just make that one suggestion about how these individuals now could feel so much better about really letting go and knowing that they're really helping out someone else, I think it makes everyone, I just think it makes people feel good to know that they're doing good and that their things can still have a good home. So those are some of the things I think about. And then another thing that I just want to add here is when someone is making a decision about letting go of something, no matter what it is, there's usually two reasons why they have a difficulty in letting go. And it's either for emotional, sentimental reasons or financial reasons or both. And both of them are hard, whether it's the emotional or the financial reason. But you have to think of what is the end goal? Why are we downsizing, in the first place? So yeah, lots of questions to be asked of yourself while you're going through the process.
Well, it is emotionally, I think, harder than physically, I know, for most of my clients.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, as we're filming this, we are still in the stay-home order because of the pandemic. and people are cleaning out their, closets like crazy, and there's going to be a lot of items that are going to be, ready to be donated. Um, and I was talking to a friend of mine about that, and she had really gotten in the zone and emptied a bunch of closets of not just clothing but other items as well. And then as the boxes sat in her front hallway, she started going through them, pulling things out. So I think that's where, having the discipline that you put in the process, if somebody follows your guidelines and your plan, is really good.
Yeah.
And I think the 10-step process is just wonderful for helping.
One thing that I'll add about that, that happens all the time.
Oh, really?
And here's what happens. This is why we offer to take those donations away for our clients. I like to say so it doesn't grow feet and walk back into the house, because we know that this happens, and we know that the hardest part was to make the decision to put those things into the box or the bag and have it leave the house. But the longer those items sit in the house or they sit in the garage and they don't get to those locations, yes, sometimes they find their way back into the home. Oftentimes, if clients don't want us to take the donations away, we will literally ask them, could we put the donations in your vehicle so that at the end of our session today, you can take them and drop them off? And so that we're closing the loop on that, so that they're not having to do all of this great work that they've already made decisions on.
Brilliant. And the book, your first book, I believe it was, Eliminate Chaos.
Right.
That is just such a good process, and I know that one of the things on your webinar that you held recently, you said, is that people tend to start towards the end of the list, and that is they love to run out and buy all these wonderful containers to put things in. And I know I am guilty of that. My mother certainly was, as if buying those containers were going to make our closets look like the magazines, and it didn't quite work out. So can you just real briefly, as much time as you can share, explain just what the process is and why anyone needs to follow it to get a good outcome?
Well, when I wrote the book, I specifically made steps, because I found that one of the biggest mistakes people make when organizing is that they shop first. So that's actually step 8 in the process, not step 1, because you don't know what you need until you have gone through the steps. So without getting through the entire process, I'll take you through the most important steps, and that is, really initially you have to make time and have a goal for what you want the end result to be. And then you're going to gather up some supplies like boxes for donations and bags for garbage, recycling, whatnot. And then you want a good work area. It's what I call establish a staging area. And now we're going to get really into the process of sorting, grouping, editing or eliminating things that we no longer need in our life, and then grouping like items together. And so step 4, 5, and 6 kind of go hand in hand, where I've already talked about how important that step 4 is of sorting, because that's really where you're making the decisions about what's going to stay in your home and what's going to leave the home. And until you've gone through an area and you have made the decisions on those items, you can't really organize, because you don't have an idea yet of, how is the space going to look? What kind of product will you need? How much stuff do you have left to organize? So for all those people that go out to the store first and go shopping, and they wonder why when they get to the store, they have no idea what they need. It's because they haven't done 4, 5, and 6 to begin with. And when we get to 7, that's when we're going to, step 7, we re-examine the space to see, well, does the space make sense anymore? Or do we need to repurpose the space? Now we can go shopping. But if you're going to go shopping, what you really need to do is have a list of what you're kind of looking for, measurements, take some pictures on your phone, and then you can bring that product home and start to put it in place. It works much better that way. But for those that run out to the store, what they're really doing is they're putting a Band-Aid on the problem. They are not finding a solution to what really their main goal is to accomplish. And then, step 9 is just get the product put in place, whatever that might be. And while I talk about that for a minute, I want to just say that everybody has a different definition of what it means to be organized. Some people want their spaces to look like it could be photographed for a magazine, and that's okay. I like that look. And other people, they don't really care. They just want to be able to find their stuff. That's the goal. And so maybe we don't buy any product at all. Maybe we just reuse what they already have, and that's okay too. You have to find what you are comfortable maintaining. That is step 10. That is another really hard step for a lot of people, because now you've done all this work and now you have to keep it that way. Because while we can go in and we can do all of these steps for our clients, we don't live in the homes, so we're not going to keep it up. Clients have to keep that up. And I think it's important for everyone to understand, when something is set up and organized, is it done in a way that is easy for them to maintain? Because if it isn't, it's not going to stay that way. And so that's why I know that this process works, because we have used this now for 20 years. The book's been out for 15. All of our specialists are trained in this process. Our clients don't necessarily know when we're on step whatever, 2 or 10. I mean, they'll know when we get to 10. But the thing is that we don't stop and say, well, now we're going to do this, now we're going to do that. It's a very logical flow that we take our clients on while they're making, some of these really, really tough decisions. That's the process.
It'd be easier if we could shop our way to clutter-free. So we've talked a lot about homeowners, but you also have a large business working in the commercial segment with offices. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So we do a variety of things in the business environment. We project manage and move a lot of our residential clients. We also do that in the commercial space. It looks very different than it does moving a homeowner, but we do some of that work. I also do a lot of consulting and coaching with our clients to organize anything that you can imagine that's digital. So my background in management information systems, I'm really big into making sure that you have, information that's organized, that is at your fingertips. So whether that's with organizing your inbox in Microsoft Outlook, or setting up OneNote digital notebooks, or getting all of your passwords into a password management system, we do some of that. I do a lot of that work, actually. And then my husband, Rob, is our IT specialist, and he does not only work for the company, but he also works in our clients' homes and offices to make recommendations on the technology that they should be using for their businesses as well.
Oh, awesome. Great synergy there.
Yeah, works.
Terrific. Well, one thing that's exciting for me is, as we've chatted about, Compass has a concierge program, and it's where Compass will front the costs of getting a home ready to go on the market. And then the buyer reimburses Compass. There's no loan fee or interest, but Compass is paid back at closing, and your services are included in that. So we can use your services to help a client get organized, declutter their home, or just even organize the move. So we're excited when we're able to have more face-to-face contact with people, that we will be able to get that launched more vigorously. And
Right.
you have personnel all over Western Washington. You have quite a few that work for you.
We do. We have quite a large team of organizing specialists that work for the company. And yeah, we can do projects of all different sizes. And when somebody is moving, we don't necessarily have to do everything for them. We can do bits and pieces. We can do a move consultation and get someone started. And
Mhm.
we typically take, 2 to 3 hours on site, and then maybe several hours of writing a document for them, or a move plan, if you will, of how they can do things on their own. Everybody needs help in different areas. Sometimes we do it all. We will go in and we'll do the downsizing, and we'll hire the mover, and we'll manage move day, and we'll do all their packing and the unpacking and the organizing and hanging the art. But again, it doesn't have to go like that. I think, like for you, Jean, one of the things that I know with every broker is that in order to list that home, you really want it to be, fairly sparse, not have a lot of clutter, not have a lot of personal effects around the house, on the walls, the tchotchkes out, all of those things can be packed up in advance, but it's also a really good time to take a look at what you maybe don't need in the next home. And so there are things like that that can be done. But again, sometimes people just kind of need help getting started with that. And we can do that in person, but we also do that virtually. And just because we're in sort of these strange times right now doesn't mean that this is new to us. I have been doing these move walkthroughs with our clients in different parts of Washington state as well as the country for probably over a decade, using different technologies. FaceTime works really well for that, because somebody can take me on a tour of their home, and I can literally tell them like what they need to do and where they need to start, and what are the resources that they need. And we can zoom in basically on how to really get them started without me even physically being there. So that's available as well.
That's terrific. And then you can, they could arrange for check-ins with you periodically to help keep them on task and set some little goals so that things keep moving along even though you're not there.
That's right. Yeah, we really try and work with our clients how it works best for them. Everyone is different, so we don't really take a cookie cutter approach to it. We lay out, here's all the things that we offer. You tell us where we can be, of most service to you.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Well, I've recommended your book to many people, and if they want to purchase Eliminate Chaos, as well as your other books that you have written, the best way is to go to your website. Is that correct?
Sure. Yeah, they can go to our website. It's available there. There's a few copies left on Amazon, although I think I own most of the copies that remain. And maybe at the end of the video, we can throw in a picture of what the book looks like, but it is available on our website, and then I can always personalize it for someone too if they would like.
Well, that would be super. And then maybe add some of the other ones that you've written. Well, Laura, I've really enjoyed talking with you. I'm very impressed by what you do because you're able to get people to go through this process in a way that reduces so much of the stress because you somehow just eliminate the stress as well as the chaos.
Right.
So thank you for that. And I hope that I can see you in person soon when things get back to normal.
That's right. Well, thanks so much for having me, and I hope that your, clients will find some of this information very, very useful for their next move.
I know they will. Thank you so much for your time, Laura.
You're welcome. Thanks, Jean.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.